Welcome to another edition of Vigorously with me, Val Kleinhands, fellow podcaster based in the upper Midwest. Chris Johnson is here in the building. I am thrilled to have you, sir. We have a lot in common. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just at my house, so I don't have to go
Yeah.
anywhere. Studio P, as I call it, which is just
Studio
my dining
P.
room. Yeah.
Well, my dining room too. We need to do dining room studios, some sort of theme like that because
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah. Like
literally at
MTV
my
Cribs, but it's
yeah,
just
dining room studios.
people's podcast studios.
It's literally just that the neon sign and me at my dining room table with a laptop and a mic that I was thrilled to invest in. We could like nerd out about equipment all day, I'm sure though.
Oh
But
yeah,
I,
for real.
I wanted to talk with you because I know we have a lot in common. We're both podcasters, we both love animals, and we're practically neighbors. You being in Eau Claire, me being in Rochester, Minnesota. For anybody that doesn't know, that's just like a 2 hour drive ish across Mississippi between us. Have you always lived in Eau Claire?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, my parents actually bought this house. Like, this is a funny story. I live in my mom's basement, but like only kind
Yes.
of. So
Okay.
my parents bought the house I'm in currently in 1991,
Mm.
when I was a baby, because one of the bigger employers in Eau Claire was a Uniroyal plant. It was the tire factory, which now called
Mm.
Banbury Place downtown. It's a massive factory, and so when that closed down and everyone got laid off, the housing market got cheap. So that's when my
Okay.
parents bought this house, and they got a sweet deal on it. Well, many years passed. Is where I grew up. Graduated, went to Duluth, UMD for college for a little bit before dropping out, and then moved to Minneapolis for a year for a job. But otherwise, like I was back in Eau Claire full time by the time I was like 20, and was like, this is where I want to live. And I was with my ex-wife from when I was 14 till I was 29.
Oh,
So we
wow.
were like settled down, and by 23, I already owned a house, I had a dog, had my first child, was married, and owned my own business already. Like had my skateboard shop. I settled down like super early. And
Yeah.
so I owned my other house until I got divorced. When I got divorced, sold that house, kind of wanted to start fresh. And it was just the right timing of my dad was looking to sell this house because he's retired now. So he lives up at his cabin on the lake during the summer. And then
Oh,
during
okay.
winter, he snowbirds it and goes to Florida. And so it was like, hey, I could afford a house in Florida if I sell the one in Eau Claire. And I was like, dude, I'm trying to get a different house. So
Hold on there, sir. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it just kind of worked out. But yeah, no, I mean, I love Eau Claire. I used to tell people I'm a super townie, because I owned a business downtown for a decade up until recently I know everybody in this city, not that it's a big city, but I'm also the vice chair of the Parks and Waterways Commission. And been involved in a lot of things in the city over the years.
How did you foster that love? What was your favorite things about it?
About Eau Claire,
Hmm.
ah, I don't know. I think, when you're younger, you think everything's going to be like amazing when you leave. Like
Yeah.
everybody, like I've been a skateboarder my whole life. So once I was old enough to drive, me and my friends would pile in my car and drive to downtown Minneapolis and go skateboarding because that's like
Yeah.
the mecca for the Midwest. And so it was just in my head, like, oh, that's where I need to be. I need to be in Minneapolis. And, once I was in the Minneapolis area, I found myself driving back to Eau Claire at least one weekend a month and never doing anything in Minneapolis. Like,
Mm.
I wasn't going into the city to do anything that I couldn't do in Eau Claire any more often than when I was living in Eau Claire.
Okay.
Because it's only like 90 miles away. How often do you really go to shows and that, especially if you're a parent? Like, not super frequently. So I didn't really see the appeal of living in a larger city. And then I had just more of an appreciation for Eau Claire after that. It was like, wow, we have so much nature here. It's more affordable. I like the comfort of knowing people. I like that my kids can ride their bicycles around the block and I don't even have to think about it. Like it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
safe. It's just different. Eau Claire is perfect for me. I mean, when my kids eventually graduate from high school, I got 10 more years. Then I think I'm gonna sell everything and move to an island. But until then, I think I'm gonna stay here.
I got it. Everybody leave me alone. I'm on
Yeah,
that vibe too.
yeah, yeah, for
But
real.
I feel the same way about Rochester in that I'm learning it's a happy medium between where I came from
Which
and
is where?
where I wanted to be. Pittsburgh originally. I know I don't
Oh,
sound like a
okay.
Minnesotan. I know I don't even look like a Minnesotan. Like there is zero Viking blood in here. This is all meatball. This is all Irish and Italian American meatball, like from the
Yeah,
East
but
Coast.
that's what Minneapolis is, right? Like Minnesota is, or you're in Rochester, sorry.
Yeah.
But I feel like you would be like a Minneapolis person because Rochester, yeah, you get the, oh, don't you know, like you
Oh,
get,
yes,
yeah, you get that type of a thing
you do.
there. But
Yeah.
in the city, you don't. I feel like you would fit in Minneapolis with even just your style and everything you would.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, but I mean, and I do feel because I'm in Minneapolis probably once a month too. Now that I've lived here longer and I've kind of sort of developed a friend group there, I feel a
Yeah.
little bit more comfortable there. However, Rochester is kind of a happy medium because I came from Pittsburgh originally, and I had to leave my city. Like, completely different story. I had to leave because there was no work. Period
Oh, sure.
in radio. Like it's a Rust Belt dying town, and it
Yeah.
has been since the 80s. So I had to leave, and I ended up in like the middle of Illinois with my first radio job on the air in the middle
Mm.
of cornfields, 2.5 hours outside Chicago. Like, this is not glamorous Chicago. This is the
South of
cornfield, two
Chicago.
hours. Yeah. This
Yeah.
is like Peru, Ottawa, like Starved Rock. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
Population 10,000, just to put that in perspective. So
Yeah.
for me, when I got the opportunity in Rochester, which is what brought me here to begin with, I was like, thank God, like this is a happy medium. Like, there's a little more going on here, but it's not so insane that I feel
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I
Plus,
was
Minneapolis isn't far away. You know, like I
right,
said, that's the
right.
huge part for me is if I want to go to something huge that a big city has to offer, MSP is one of the biggest, best airports in the country. Like
Yes.
the XL Energy Center, Taylor Swift goes there. I mean, it's like huge acts, huge things happen in
Mhm.
Minneapolis. And how often do you do those things? For me, not super often. So driving an hour, hour and a half is like really not that big a deal. I'm actually driving
No.
to Minneapolis on Friday. I've been doing
Oh,
a lot of interviews out in Minneapolis because, like I told you, I've interviewed hundreds of people, but it's only in person. I don't do virtual ones.
yeah.
So there's it's my all-time favorite music artist. His name's Sunreal. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with him.
No,
Um,
but I'm taking notes.
yeah, you gotta check him out. He's from Vancouver. He blew up like more than 10 years ago for a rap song, like his first like main single called Everywhere We Go, and it like took off. Like the music video is like 44 million views or something ridiculous. And kind
Wow.
of overnight, he's got a cool story actually. He was working construction and quit his job the day before releasing that music video, just like full faith that was going to go, and it did.
Wow.
And within a few days, he got flown down to LA and got signed to a major record label. Yeah.
What?
So, anyways, many years have passed, and now he's a father of three, and kind of changed his sound quite a bit. He put out basically a whole acoustic album that was kind of like folk kind of music, and so
Hmm.
now it's kind of a mixture of like rap and folk and alternative.
Hmm.
His newest project he put out is like all rap again. But anyways, he's my all-time favorite music artist. And the show had gotten big enough where I noticed a lot of people just would respond. I could just kind of DM whoever within reason.
Hmm.
And he had posted, this was a couple years ago, that he was going to go on his first international tour since before the pandemic. And
Nice.
so I just DM'd him like, hey, like I knew he used to skateboard, and I was like, hey, I own a skateboard shop. I know you used to skate. I'm a big fan. Any chance you do it? And he was like, yeah, here's my manager's number. And so then, a few months later, I found myself going to what was it at Amsterdam Hall in St. Paul, and I showed up at the same time. It was like 3:45. We walked into the venue at the same time, and then I interviewed him for like 45 minutes backstage. And then he's like, "Oh, what are you doing the rest of the day?" I was like, "I don't know." He goes, "You want to hang out?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, exactly. So then I ended up doing kind of a short interview with his opener, Soul, this rapper from Seattle, out in their tour van, and then just like hung out with them like the whole night. And so just like maintain friendship like I do with a lot of the guests. And he's coming back to St. Paul again for the first time since then on Friday at Amsterdam again. And so we're gonna do a round two interview, and I get to hang out for the show again. I'm pretty excited.
That is beautiful. And speaking of making those connections with guests, a lot of the time when I invite somebody on my podcast or this podcast, they might say something like, "Oh, okay, I don't know how good I'll be though," or they're just nervous about like being on in general. How do
Yeah.
that's not what you do with Passion Pod though. You make it a very comfortable environment. What do you think the secret to doing that is?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There are some people that struggle with it more than others. But what I tell people at the beginning, for one, I usually talk with them for a little while before we start recording. But I just like reiterate to them, we're just talking about your own life.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to blindside you with any questions that you don't already know the answers to, because it's your own life, you know?
Hmm.
Um, I try to keep things relatively light at the beginning just to kind of ease them in. But that's all just part of like interviewing. You know what I mean? Like
One on
it's
one.
interviewing is a skill like anything. You have to be able to read the situation and kind of figure out what does this guest need, you know, to be able to be successful in this. Like the whole point of what is, well, I guess there's multiple reasons people listen to podcasts, but the reason people listen to my podcast is for storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Because people tell a story about their lives, you know, like I just told about meeting my favorite music artist, right? So when somebody tells a story like that, it paints a picture for the audience and they're like, wow, I can relate to that. Like that's the type of thing that I'm trying to get out of my guest. Not all guests understand that, you know, because they haven't
Hmm.
done a ton of interviews or whatever. So sometimes I'll ask the question, and if I could tell they are going to give me like a one sentence answer, you know, they're not going to give me what I need, I will preface and then tell them, here's an example for myself. And then I'll share a story. And then I'll say,
Okay.
what is an example for you? Right.
Right.
And thankfully, with what I do at this point, because I've been doing the show a little over 5 years now, I have three camera angles. You typically only see two of them. But because of that, I can cut out any amount of a conversation and you can't really tell.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So
Production wise.
right. So if I could tell, like, oh, I need to re-ask this question for somebody, or I really need to set them up, like I need to answer the question myself so they know what kind of an answer. Sometimes I'll cut, but usually you don't. Once you get people to settle in a little bit, you know what I mean? Then they're usually just fine.
It becomes natural in seconds. I've
Yeah.
had that happen too, and it's a beautiful thing because it becomes this mutual exchange. And you forget. I've had many times where I forget the camera's even on, or that
Yeah,
the mic
sure.
is even on at all.
Yeah.
The cornerstone behind Passion Pod is, like you said, that storytelling, but more specifically, you speak with people about what they're passionate about. Why is that so important to you to focus on that aspect of their life and to get those stories?
Well, I mean, I guess this is the question I ask pretty much everyone, which is not necessarily on the show, but just in life is if money didn't matter at all, how would you choose to spend your time?
Mm,
And I think it's really important to be able to answer that question for yourself because that can guide you for what you want to do with your life in general. Like every job like has parts of it you don't like, right? Like I spend a lot of time editing right now. I don't necessarily want to spend that much time forever, but I'm like learning stuff. Like there's parts of it. But if you know what you would want to do if money didn't matter in the first place, you could kind of like build a lifestyle around that, right? And I can
got it.
confidently say that if I didn't need to make money, I would still be doing this show because I really enjoy doing it. Like I get to meet people that are, you know, I'm a huge fan of all the time. I get to hang out with people that I otherwise would never be able to get in contact with. I live a really cool life just based on the show. Like I said, maybe I
Yeah.
would hand off some editing, you know, things or whatever, but I would still do the show, and I would definitely still paint murals because I love being outside, like playing music and painting murals. Like because of that, then I can try to build around it. But it does take a long time to build that. Another thing is like if you want to do something for a living that other people do for free, you need to be able to do it on a whole different level than them. And that takes a
Mm,
lot of time because even the people who do it for free have been doing it for a while, right? Like how many people play guitar just because they like it? A
tons.
lot. A lot of people get really good at it, but
Yeah.
they're still not, you know, a session guitarist with a major band. And they're not
Hmm.
traveling, touring the country for how good they are at guitar. And it's a similar thing with podcasting. It's like it took a really long time before the show was in a place where it was like financially sustainable. Like now this is my
Mm,
full-time job. This is how I make my living is from my show. But it
that's
took
my goal.
yeah, it's dope. But you know, I didn't close my store until July, which is a whole nother long story. Closed on
What
a good
happened?
note. Well, it's that was just my whole life, you know, like
Yeah.
my whole life I wanted to own a skateboard shop. It's from when I was a little kid because I always skateboarded. And then I opened
Hmm.
my own when I was 23. back April 11th, 2014. And I did that for over 10 years. So that was such a big part of my identity for such a long time. But the show had become bigger and bigger and something that I just enjoyed more and I saw more of a future in. And it was hard for me with my own like personal identity to walk away from owning the skateboard shop because that was most of my adult life.
Mm,
Like I was the skateboard guy in town for most people. That's what they thought of me. But I got burnt out on like, I didn't really want to hang out in the same room talking to people about the same thing over and over again, And I was
I
getting
see.
older and older and older. So skateboarding less, not like connecting less with the clientele and the whole community as a whole, because I'm 34 now, which is young, but for skateboarding, it's not,
Yeah.
And like, it just got to a point where I just didn't get the joy out of it that I once did, which is okay. It's totally fine. But thankfully, I built the show up during that time frame where it was like, oh, this is a natural progression that I can afford to do. But it took a
Yeah.
really long time to get to the point where this was something that was like financially feasible. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's incredible. And that's a good problem to have if you break it
Yeah,
down. Like, I liked both things, but this thing is now becoming more successful and I like it on top of that.
yeah, yeah,
So,
for sure.
what do you do to make sure that you don't lose that joy? Is letting go part of that maybe?
I don't know. I don't think anything's meant to be forever in people's lives. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not the right words to say anything, but like generally speaking, we evolve as people. And I think a lot of times people have a difficult time letting go of whatever portion of their life. If they liked a band for however many years and they have these band tees, they're like, well, I always have to like them. And like maybe you don't anymore, like because your tastes and whatever change, your dreams change. You as a person, like on a molecular level, are a totally different person after 7 years. So like you know what I mean? Things are supposed to change. But I'm really happy doing what I'm doing right now, and it's like I don't foresee an end to it at any point, but that doesn't mean there won't be. Maybe in 10 years I'm sick of doing it. But as of right now, like it's not repetitive. The editing part is. But I don't have a boss. No one's telling me what to do. I could pivot at any point. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
I decided I really wanted to only talk to people about music and just go to shows, like I've worked with music festivals and stuff, I could just be purely a music festival goer and interview people at music festivals, like performers, and then have an editor to handle it. And now I'm just traveling the world going to music festivals for a living. Like if that was something I wanted to do, there's a lot of past that I could go and not get bored of it. But right now, I'm
Right.
just like happy. I was telling my girlfriend the other day, and I've said this to a lot of people recently. I genuinely am the least stressed out and happiest I've been in a very long time since like I got divorced 5 years ago, since long before that. Like, this is the happiest I've felt in, I don't know, 7 years, maybe more.
That's incredible. What is the origin story behind Passion Pod? How did you fall into it? Was it a conscious choice?
Yeah, kind of. So I was a guest on a skateboarding podcast out of Minnesota, out of
Mm.
Burnsville. It was called Locals Only Podcast. I don't remember what year this was, but maybe a year or two before I started my show. And they interviewed me because I owned a skateboard shop. And I remember driving out there, doing the interview, and it was fun. I'm not talking shit because these guys are awesome. Mitch is the man. Um, but they literally like one of the microphones was duct taped to a thing.
Oh
Like it was
no.
just like, and they wanted to like shotgun beers in the middle of the interview. Like I'm like, dude, I got to drive back home. Like I don't really,
Yeah, I
and it,
understand.
and I've just like always had a like business sense because I've owned a business for so long. And even before that, I was in retail since I was like 16. And so I remember driving home from that experience thinking to myself, man, that was really fun. I could do that so much better. And I
Mm,
really think that would be fun to give this experience that I just had. I think it'd be fun to give that experience to other people, meaning the guests. And so it was kind of in the back of my head of like, that would be really cool. I think I would be good at it. I'm not sure when I want to do it. I'm not sure but we'll see, at some point. And then what happened was I wanted people to wear my clothing. So Passion has always been like the brand, right? Because my skateboard shop is called Passion Board Shop, and that's why the show is
Hmm.
called Passion. It's all based on that. Um, and friends of mine, especially as I got older, less and less of them skated, and I'd be like, hey, you should get like, why don't you wear a sweatshirt that says passion on it? Like I'd put out a new apparel line and they wouldn't buy it. And I'd ask them, and their answer was always, well, I would shop at your store, but I don't want to be a poser. I don't skate, so I can't wear it.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
like, you could support your personal friend's business. Like you don't, if you shop at a Zoomies, what do you mean? Why can't you, So I thought there was just that weird stigma attached. It's a core skate shop. So people who don't skate can't wear it. And so I was thinking of how I could combat that. And I thought about how some of these major companies like Oakley or whatever, they sponsor people across a lot of different genres and they have like ambassadors. And so this rapper came into my store. His name's Miles Boulevard. And I had never really listened to his music. He was like a kind of a skate kid who always was like, "Hey, you need to listen to my music." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get to it." And so he came into my store, talked to him, and I finally listened to his music after he had left. And I was like, whoa, this dude doesn't sound like he's from Eau Claire. This is actually dope. This is way better than I was expecting it to be. And so I hit him up and I was like, hey, dude, I actually listened to it this time. And it was dope. I'm impressed. And then I said, what do you think about wearing passion branded merchandise at shows? I was like, this could be an opening to get people to realize it doesn't have to exclusively be skateboarding. And he was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I would love to do that. And I said, cool. I don't actually know you. So like we should hang out because I would like to know you better if you're like representing my brand. And
Okay.
he's like, cool. So he came over to my house, like, I don't know, a few days later or whatever. And for a good 2 hours, 2.5 hours, we just like had a couple of beers and I basically interviewed him, not really on purpose, but like that's kind of what happened because I wanted to know the story.
Hmm.
And, in skateboarding, everyone always refers to this like worldwide network and family that you have because you have this like thing in common. And I thought that energy I had with talking to other skateboarders was unique to skateboarding. And then I realized it wasn't when I was talking to Miles. It was the
Mm.
same type of energy. And it was because we were talking about things we were passionate about. And in skateboarding, we were just always both parties were interested and passionate about skateboarding. So that's where the connection came from. But when I was talking to him about music and about him growing his career in that kind of way, being a creative, then we still had the same thing in common, right? We were still talking about things that he was passionate about, where I was in a similar lane doing something different, but I was passionate about it. And so there was that energy there. And I asked him, I said, hey, I've been thinking about doing a podcast. I don't know that I would actually use it. But what do you think about coming over like in a week from now and we try recording the same conversation? And he
Okay.
was like, yeah, yeah, whatever you want to do. I was like, cool. So he came over a week later and I have a picture of it. Me and him sat with my like wingback chairs next to my fireplace and my laptop just set up between us with Audacity recording with just the
Yes, I know
internal
Audacity.
microphones.
And
Yeah,
listen,
not,
for beginners, it's perfect,
it's
really.
free. It doesn't hurt you to
Yes,
try.
not at
So
all.
I used that without, like I said, without any actual mics. And we were like having beers, drinking, and recorded it. And it just turned out a lot better than I thought it would. And I was like, wow, this might be something. So then I asked another friend of mine who had a pet care company and pitched the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I'll use it or not, but I'm thinking about doing this thing. And so she came over, and that time I had kind of prepared questions at a time, and it turned out way better than I thought it would. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I have something here. Conveniently enough, right around that time frame, the dude who did that podcast I was on, the locals only one, the skateboarding one,
Yeah.
I was doing this fundraiser in Eau Claire, and he came to be a part of it, knew or heard that I was like starting to do this show, and he surprised me and brought me all of his recording equipment. And he just like
Oh,
gave it to me. Yeah. I mean, it was not
wow,
super
what a
expensive stuff,
gift.
but yeah, he was like, we're not doing the show anymore. You can have it. And so then I went and recorded 8 more episodes where each guest was from a different industry because I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I've been pigeonholed as like the skateboard guy forever. So I wanted to like get away from that. went and re-recorded those first two episodes. So the one with Miles, that was the third time I talked to him of the same conversation.
This guy really likes you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so then I had a 10 episode season and I wanted to put it out similar to like putting out an album.
Mm,
So I edited the whole thing and then I gave myself a month to market and promote it to figure out what I wanted to do with it. And during that time frame, I got connected with the local independent station, Converge Radio 101.9 FM. And from the beginning, the first ever episode premiered on the radio. And it's just permanently been on the radio like ever since then. The first episode came out on the
wow.
radio in November of 2019, so 5 years ago. And yeah, now I'm on Sundays and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. I program it in so it's not live.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then it snowballed because other business owner friends of mine were like, "Well, how do I get on?" Because they're
Yeah.
getting an hour long commercial for their business on the radio. Like, I want to
Right.
promote my stuff on the radio. And I was like, I don't know, sure. And so it just kind of snowballed. Once the pandemic was here, things were kind of shut down, so I could kind of go wherever, like my schedule became a little bit more fluid because I couldn't be open for a while. And then I started
Mm.
hiring people. And so I started going out to California to interview people. And then that kind of snowballed because once I knew some people in LA, then I had access to their networks of people. And so I was getting all these big people that I shouldn't have been able to get a hold of, but their careers were put on pause. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I
Everybody had
interviewed,
time.
yeah, the show New Girl, right?
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, Lamorne Morris, who plays
Yeah.
Winston.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I interviewed him at his house, and this was like way before, and he just won an Emmy. And this was way before I should have been able to get a hold of him, but I just
That
had a
is
mutual
wild.
friend, and at the time he had his own TV show on Hulu called Woke, and they were about
I
to
remember.
record season two, but the pandemic hit, so everything was put on pause. Well, so he wasn't doing anything. He's like, yeah, you guys can come over and hang out. I got nothing to do. That dude's way too busy. He doesn't normally have nothing to do, but he didn't
Right.
have anything to do because of the pandemic. And so I interviewed him. And then because I had gotten him on the show, then it was easy to like name drop him when I'm reaching out to other people. And it just kind of went and
Mm.
went and went. And then in order to make the show financially like sustainable, I had to start figuring out sponsorships. And I really wanted to get sponsored by Quick Trip because that's if you're in the Midwest, like you want to be sponsored by Quick Trip.
What is your quick trip order? Let's get into it because they're my
Oh my
spirit animal
God.
too. Like I
Yeah.
need a big old soft pretzel with cheese and just like like all the Ruffles chips in the
I
aisle.
like,
That's my
yeah,
quick trip binge.
I like everything from there, but it's not even special to Quick Trip. I like to get Twin Snakes and Sprite when I'm driving. I don't know why that's my move. If I have to drive
Yeah.
late, then I'll drink a Red Bull or Drink
Oh yeah.
Weird. If you've had that stuff, is incredible. Do you know
Ooh,
Drink
okay.
Weird?
No, but now I'm taking notes.
It's so dope. You can get it at grocery stores and stuff now. It's like a newer brand from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
They make like yerba mates and teas, but it's
Hmm.
like pretty high caffeine in it. But it's like all organic. And my buddy Michael Sieben, who used to be the managing editor of Thrasher magazine, the skateboard magazine, he's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
illustrator as well, and he's the art director for the company. And so I interviewed him down in Texas. And so that's kind of how I knew the brand even happened. But anyways, I like to get those. As far as like warm food, I think I'm not even a hot dog guy, but their hot dogs are really good.
They
I like
are.
their bacon cheeseburgers. Those are really good. I mean, it's all
Chicken
good.
sandwiches. Oh, like
Yeah.
right. They've
Yeah.
been under the heat lamp all day. They're probably God knows what's on them, but I don't care. I'll
I
eat it
think so
anyway.
many people buy them that they're pretty fresh because they bred them in the back and stuff. But
Oh,
anyways,
do they?
yeah, yeah, they hand bred them themselves. But anyway, so I wanted to make this thing sustainable, right? So I reached
Yeah.
out to Quick Trip. And the answer that I got from them basically, well, it took chirping at them for a long time. But one of the things I figured out from it was my audience was too spread out. So I was
Mm,
interviewing a lot of people in LA, but their audiences weren't from LA because the people who live in LA aren't from there. They're from wherever and they move there. So their
right.
audiences are wherever they're from. And so my listenership was really spread out kind of like everywhere. And so at that point, I kind of made the conscious decision to focus more so on being in the Midwest, so I could grow my audience there. And I've just continued to do that. Like the only reason I was going to LA anyways, because that was the only way I could get a hold of people. Well,
Mm,
during this time frame, I had grown so much that now I could just DM people like I did with Sunreal, from Vancouver. I just like messaged him, and that's how I get a hold of most people at this point. I figured out I don't have to have them in my network. I can just reach out to anybody, anyone. And if they want to do it, they'll do it. And we have so many people in the Midwest between Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Green
we
Bay,
do.
and people coming through all the time that
Right.
there's no like I'm not limited on finding people. There's a ton of people to interview that are cool. And so then
Yeah.
that snowballed too, because once I got sponsored by Quick Trip, then I was able to get a deal with Nicolay Law. And then having a deal with Nicolay Law, then I could also get a deal with Hop and Barrel. And then I got my new headphone sponsor, Koss. And, once all that happened, it was like, cool, this is financially stable to make this 100% my career. Once it's 100% my career, now the show can take off on a whole nother level because I can put 40 hours a week or more into it,
And
and
that's a
then,
level, like you're upgrading everything at that point,
yeah,
like at the quality of what I'm talking about, because you have that
totally.
literal time to invest into it. The quality of
Exactly.
everything goes up, and then that brings the audience in. It's
Right.
incredible.
Well, that's the thing with like talking about audacity at the beginning of like you're gonna suck at whatever you do at the beginning.
Yeah.
The people who are like at the top are just because they've been doing it longer than everyone else.
Mm.
Like that's the case 90% of the time. It's almost always because they've been doing it for a longer period of time. When something got hard, they didn't stop, they just kept going, right? And so if I always try to tell people to look at things in the time frame of a year. Like, don't compare yourself to a month ago. Like, you will see an improvement, but always compare yourself in a year because that gives you an actual like time frame to look and see, have I progressed? And if I look at like where my show was a year ago, like, and I've been doing this show for 5 years, you know what I mean? But if I go to where my show was a year ago, I'm on a totally different level now, and it's
Yeah.
because I've put in that time. And even just since July, since like this became my full time thing, like my TikTok is 10x, episodes are getting way more views in general and like consistently getting way more views. That everything quality wise looks way better. I'm faster at editing. I've learned a ton of random tricks here and there. Like the more you do it, you just keep picking up little things that make you better at it. But that really is the key is you just have to do it longer than everyone. That's
Hmm.
all it is.
I'm hearing that there's a lot of like transferable skills between your interviewing skills and also building relationships when it comes to business. And I know you had that
Yeah.
previous experience just as a business owner, so you had that mindset to begin with. But for someone who's maybe doing it the opposite direction and has no clue how to form those business relationships with a business mind, you can start with those relationship building skills and those conversation skills. That's what
Yeah.
I'm learning from you right now. Would you say that's true?
It is, but the other thing is like it's a pretty simple thing, like supply and demand. You have to have something of value. If you're not providing value to somebody, nothing's going to happen for you, right? And so like a lot of people they have their hand out and they don't even realize that they have their hand out necessarily, but like they do. You
Mm-hmm.
have to provide value. You have to be able to show something that other people aren't showing, right? So like my on average episodes are hitting over 100,000 views in total between like TikToks, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, the full length episode, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing all the analytics, so I have the full number breakdowns. So when I just got a new annual contract with Nicolay Law, I could then send that to him and say, every week I'm getting Russ's
Here's the
face.
evidence.
100,000 people a week are seeing Russ's face because of me.
Mm-hmm.
How many people can tell you that they'll get you 100,000 views per week of his face?
Mm-hmm.
And if you had that guaranteed, like their billboards, 400 of them, they're paying way more than they're paying me,
Yeah.
right? But you have to
Yeah.
have something that's tangible, like that you can actually measurably say, this is bringing value to you in some kind of capacity. You can't
Mm-hmm.
just say, hey, I really want to work with this. I really want to get sponsored by this thing. If the brand doesn't see a benefit, if you can't present that to them, they're not going to do it. And even if you can present, a value to them, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But that's the biggest thing in the first place is like you yourself have to build yourself, your skills, everything around you up to a point where that has value to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
it
knowing
takes
how
a
to
long
market
time.
yourself. Yeah.
Right. It takes a long time to get to it where it's like financially valuable. right? So
Yeah.
like talking about like on a podcast as an example, if you're going to reach out to a guest and you're going to like want to get this person to come on your show, what value are you providing them? Some people just like to talk about themselves, but generally speaking, like they need to see value there, right? So
Hmm.
what's the value? The value would be that their story and their brand is going to be promoted to your audience. So
Hmm.
what's the best way to do that? Show them, hey, this is what it's going to look like, and this is how I'm going to promote your brand to my audience, and this is what my audience looks like.
Hmm.
Otherwise, people aren't going to want to do it because they're not going to see a value in why should I do that? And it's the same
Yeah.
type of thing when you're pitching, like I said, to a brand or, really to anybody. Like when I reach out to, like when I reach out to a guest, I'll say, hey, here are some past episodes. Here are guests that I've interviewed. This is the point of what I'm doing. All it's going to cost you is 90 minutes of your time because I'm going to drive to you and work around your schedule and I will make all of the content,
Right.
right? And I don't make them agree to anything. Like it's just, hey, I'm going to do all of this. And then once I've done all of that, right? Like I've got 30 clips from this hour long episode cut with captions and like formatted. I got all that. I got the episode done. I'll give all of that information to the guest, say, hey, it's done. This is the date that I'm looking to release it. Here's all of the, say, top 10 best clips I think from this episode or that came from this episode. I would love to do a collaboration with you with one or more of these if you like them. Are there any that you really like that you think would be great for your audience? Rather
Hmm.
than just saying, hey, do this post with me or whatever, right? Now I'm giving them, hey, I already did all of this work and you can see it when you watch this. Like, whoa, Chris spent a lot of time. Me as
Yeah.
the guest, I only spent 90 minutes with him. Chris clearly worked all week long on this and these look good. And I now don't have to make content because for my own page, because he just made content for me. And it's
Okay.
something that I actually feel good about because it's just as good as the content I normally put out. And it's a different type of content for my audience that my audience is going to like. And then Chris is giving me 100%, like we can do whatever you want with it. Then my guests are like, oh, cool. These are the top 3 clips that I really like. We could do collaboration posts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because I'm presenting it in a way that brings value to them. And that, like I said, that's kind of how you have to approach any kind of relationship, like business or anything, even like romantic relationships. It really is like an exchange. What am I bringing to this relationship? I'm bringing love, I'm bringing affection, I'm bringing stability, I'm bringing friendship, I'm bringing whatever. Like relationships don't work if they're one-sided. There always has to
Yeah.
be value from both sides. In some circumstances, one person's going through a hard time, so the other one lifts them up, but even that's not sustainable forever, right?
No.
That's to try to take care of them while they're going through whatever their thing is to lift them back up. But then from there, again, it has to be a relatively even exchange where both people feel like they're valued. But
Hmm.
like I said, that's just business in general. That applies to everything.
You opened my eyes to a completely different perspective speaking about the promotional aspects, specifically like the reels or the clips that you'll share
Sure.
with your guests. Like I don't ask that of my guests only because I don't want them to feel like they have to commit to some doing something on their own page that they may or may not want to do for whatever
Totally.
reason. So
Yeah.
I don't pressure them at all. I don't even ask. But listening to this conversation with you, I could see how that's detrimental in my case because if I never get asked, then
Mhm.
what are we getting out of it?
Well, and again, then you have to,
Can it go as far as we really want it to?
yeah. Well, and again, you have to look at like, are you providing a value? Right. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're looking at their page, so you're talking to somebody who's got 1 million followers, who has a marketing team that handles all of their branding and everything. And it's
Hmm.
like clearly they spend money on every post that they make and they make money on every post. Right. Like, if I make a post for a brand or for a product, I get paid for that, X amount. And every creator does. Right. So, if a podcast like me or you is going to ask the guest and say, hey, will you make a post for me? That has a value to it, right? Because
Hmm.
anything else that they're promoting has a value. So you have to show them, here is why posting this would benefit you, not to promote the
Mm.
show. This is why it benefits you on your own page, right?
Hmm.
So like the clip that posted today with Dalton Hessel, the Northern Nerd,
I
He,
listened to that episode. It was, you talk about the algorithm too, and that's a whole other
yeah.
conversation
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, and
Woo!
sorry if I'm long-winded. My episodes are usually an hour, so but anyways, in it, so like the clip today was a beautiful story about how he met his wife. It's funny,
Mm,
it's like, but that's him. I'm not really even in the clip, right?
yeah, right,
Like,
right.
so it makes sense for him to post that because it tells his story. He posted a picture of him and his wife for his Instagram like the day before. So it made a ton of sense for him to do that. I provided, here's the thing, I did all the editing. You have this cool story that you can post on your account that would make sense that you're not going to have people unfollow you from or to like lose interest from. It would make sense. That's how you have to present it. So again, it's not so much like asking a favor, it's more so presenting an opportunity. And they can say
Mm,
yes or they can say no, but you know in your heart whether or not you're presenting an opportunity that brings them value. Like you could tell, right? Like I
yeah,
didn't ask Lamorne Morris, or I would never expect him to post a picture of me and him on his Instagram page. Because why
yeah,
would he? You know what I mean? He does late night TV and stuff. He has a picture of him holding his Emmy award. Like why?
yeah,
It wouldn't make any sense. So I'm not going to ask him to do that. So it's just, but again, that's the same thing with anything, right? You're not going to hit up Target and say, "Hey, pay me $1,000 a month," because they'd
no,
say, "Well, why?" Like it just wouldn't make any sense. It would just be a waste of time, right?
yeah.
So, but if you hit them up and said, "Hey, I would love to promote you. Is there any way that I could get five $20 gift cards during the show? I will shout them out, and I want to use those gift cards as guests or gifts to my guest." Now all of a sudden your guest is getting a free gift and it doesn't really like it's promotion, but your listeners and stuff aren't going to be pissed off at you. And the
No
guest isn't going to be pissed off that you just did that brand shout out because they just got a $20 gift card. Target,
value.
all it costs them is nothing unless people come in and use it. And even then it's, discounted because it's only a gift card. So they're only
Mm,
paying whatever their wholesale value is. Now all of a sudden that's a much more appealing opportunity for Target than it would have been to just pay you for an ad. You
yeah,
see what I'm saying? So, and
it
I
makes
think
total
there's
sense.
there's a lot of times though with business where it's like if you can be creative with your solutions, there's a lot of paths to get to the same place. And
Mhm.
it's not always one. Like financially can be one way to get to where you want, but that doesn't have to be the only way. There's like a lot of ways to do that, right? And sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's trading this service for this thing. Sometimes you're doing a favor for this person that gets you into this thing. Sometimes you're promoting something for free because you just want to work with this brand, but that helps you with the association to get a hold of somebody else or some other brand. It's like you gotta be open to the possibilities of what are the other ways that I could still get to this end goal that I have. And I
Mhm.
always tell people like, and this is just everyone knows this, but it really is true. I always word it differently. If people say, look at the big picture, I always don't word it that way, I guess. I word it as play the long game.
Mm,
Where do you want to
yeah,
get when it's all said and done? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Any decision that you're making right now, think about that and say, does this decision help me get to this place that I want to be in 10 years? And if it does, then do it. If it doesn't, then don't do it. It's pretty simple like that because a lot of times people are too short-sighted and they're making decisions that are costing them in the long run.
yeah,
Like don't worry about the pennies today, whether we're talking about money or anything else. Like don't worry about the small things today. Worry about what the big thing is later on that you're working towards. And that's why
mhm.
like with a brand or something, right? Like I work with Quick Trip. My initial contract with them was really not that much, right? But I knew long term that was a company I really wanted to work with. And not only that, just on my profile putting sponsored by Quick Trip when I'm reaching out to people kind of has a lot of weight. You know what
Well,
I mean?
yeah, in
And
the Midwest
so
it does for
that's what I mean.
sure.
And so even
Which is
though,
your goal to grow the
right,
audience here.
exactly. And so outside of like the financial aspect, there's a huge value in the fact that I got the clout from that to get a hold of people. So now
Yes,
I'm
yes.
getting a hold of guests that I wouldn't have been able to get a hold of
Mm,
only because I have this contract. So that's another added value to this that isn't financial. But like I said, that
mhm.
use that same like thought process with anything in life. Like that would apply. That was just one example, but that would apply for a lot of things.
Does the conversation about value first and putting a focus on value before anything else when you're entering those types of conversations, does that help when it comes to social media promotion, marketing, because you kind of like take away the worry about the algorithm if you're focused on value first? Because I would imagine it does. If you're focused on value, then that's what matters. And we're going to post this because we believe it has value, regardless of whatever the algorithm does. Because nobody knows what the algorithm's going to do. I don't know what
Yeah.
the algorithm's going to do. So I
Yeah.
would imagine that having that conversation maybe eliminates that problem, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all get caught up in it, you know, because like it's cool when something works. Like
Yes.
TikTok, I never really worried about TikTok until pretty recently. And now it's been taking off. Like I was at 1,300 followers, and then an episode that was like a month ago, one of the clips took off and it's at like 1.2 million. And so, and then several others, like a bunch of them have kind of taken off since then. And now I'm at like 10.2 thousand, you know, as of today. And that's really cool. But what I'm creating isn't changed. It's not
Yeah.
really different than what it was before, right? And the problem is if you're trying to chase what you think the algorithm wants, you're creating a portfolio that isn't accurate of what you're giving somebody. So when you're talking about again like presenting value, you're presenting value to the person to potentially follow you, right? Why would I follow this person? They rarely hit follow from one clip. They
Mhm.
usually will go to your account and look and go, is this somebody I want to give my time and attention to? Because time and attention is currency just like money. It's more valuable than money, in my opinion. So they see that and they go, okay, is this somebody I want to follow? Problem is if you're just trying to make things based on the algorithm, you're not really presenting them with that portfolio in an accurate way of what you're going to be doing in the future. It's not really showing like whether or not this person would like it, unless that's what your account is. Like there's people that their content creating journey is just doing trends in a certain voice, which is
Yeah.
totally fine. And but then that's the only reason people are following that,
Mhm.
right? Like you need to present a genuine thing. This is what you're going to get moving forward. Otherwise, people aren't going to follow it. It's like
Mhm.
people have this thought that, oh, you just go viral once and now all of a sudden you're famous. It's like it
No.
doesn't work that way because you go viral, or even if you have something that like pops, all that does is bring some eyes to the actual product, brings it to your brand. But if your brand isn't established, if you don't have value for that person, they're not going to sign on or care about what that brand is. You're not going to see that conversion. And so
Mhm.
that's why it's done. I think it's ridiculous when people they think, oh, I just need to have one song go, like musicians or whatever. It's
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
problem is though, if you only have one good song, like no one's going to care. You need to build up all of those skills so that way when your time does come, you can back it up and then you can build from that. But
Mhm.
there just like isn't shortcuts. That's
No,
kind of the bottom line. There just isn't.
I have to ask just because I'm a fan, are one of the clips that blew up because this came into my algorithm. And I think it came into my algorithm for a few reasons. One, I like animals. Two, I'm also in the upper Midwest. And three, I'm also a podcaster. Is it the clips about Good Boy? Is that what catapulted this whole thing? Because Good Boy is a legend at this point.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if you know that. He is.
Yeah, I need to
Your
it's that's
miniature
the funny
pincher.
part. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the funny part is I get messages and stuff about him all the time. I gotta post him more. No, those were not the ones that blew up. And I mean, there is one with like a 250,000 views or something on Instagram. That one did pretty well. But even that, like the problem is if I'm not consistently making content in relation to my dog, people aren't gonna like look at the account and want to follow it because it's a one-off thing.
I
And
get it.
then
Okay.
what happened, right, is after that kind of went viral, then I had people going, "Hey, where's your dog? Where's your dog? Where's your dog?"
D-
And so then I have to like make dog content, but my entire following and everything before that had nothing to do with my dog. Maybe they thought he was cute periodically when they would see him, but
Mhm.
then they'd be like, "Why are you posting your dog all the time?" You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
okay.
literally
Yeah.
had one person like send me a just a trolly message that was like, "Bro thinks he's gonna get famous from his dog," and I was like,
What?
"I'm just gonna
No.
block whoever you are real quick." But no, but that's the problem is if that's not like doesn't align with your brand. So the clip that you're
Mhm.
talking about that went really viral. It's funny because that was the first one I made of that. Really was not thought out. That was like I was editing and my dog was whining because he wanted to like sit, you know, whatever. But my recording equipment was all set up because I had done an interview and my dog was sitting there wanting attention. And for whatever reason, I was like, it would be funny if I sat you on the table and filmed you. So I put
And
my dog on
interviewed
the
him.
table. Yeah. And I did this like brief little fake interview of my dog and like used my own voice to came up with a voice and voiced it over. And yeah, that one, that's still the most viewed thing I've ever done on Instagram.
It's
Yeah.
hysterical. And what dog do you think you could take in a fight? What breed?
Yeah.
Actually, and the voice you gave him is hysterical too. It
I
really
gotta I gotta make more of that content. Now you say that I do because I did like 17 of them or something. I did quite a few of them that I was like
yeah.
trying to make one a week at least, and I've kind of fallen off. But I got up a bunch of new sweaters recently, so I guess I got to make some more dog content.
Oh, I love it. That's great. So what is next for you? What can we look forward to coming from you?
Just doing a lot of interviews. I'm just hanging out. I kind of the beautiful part right now is I'm sustainable where I don't, and I haven't had a boss in a really long time, but I don't have to do anything. Like
Yeah.
if I'm going to Honduras for like a week and a half coming up, I maybe I'll put out an episode that week. Maybe I won't. I have like five of them banked. Like I'm
Uh,
always ahead anyways.
that's
Um,
key. Batching is so
yeah,
helpful to
yeah.
staying
Well, because then you're
consistent.
not rushing. Well, and you're just not
Right.
rushing. You know, it's
Yeah.
better to not put something out than to put out something that's rushed. So I'm going to try to do some traveling. I'm supposed to paint another mural here coming up because I do
Ooh.
still paint murals. So that should be fun, you know, doing some artwork. Right now, I'm just really enjoying like the learning process. As weird as it is to be over 5 years in of doing this and still feeling like I'm learning every day, I really do feel like I'm learning every day. Like when I'm
Yeah.
spending 8 hours editing and working on these things, little things I'll pick up and go, oh, if I could do this and it would be faster. Oh, I could create a shortcut for this and now it'll be faster. And I really like seeing that growth. It's fun for me, you know, to see
Yeah.
things continue to go. And so right now, I got a bunch of really cool interviews lined up. I've just interviewed a bunch of really fun people. So I'm going to be trying to put out an episode every week. But you know, if I take a week off, I take a week off. That is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, just focusing. Like I put on my on my Instagram and stuff, number one podcast in Wisconsin a little while ago.
I did love that. I did love that.
Yeah, and like I talked this dude in the clip that really went viral was with Wayne Hoffman. He's a illusionist. He's like a
Mm.
pretty big one, and he also does like um public speaking and stuff, like motivational things.
Hmm.
And me and him have just been good buddies from when I interviewed him like 4 years ago. And one time when we weren't recording, we were just hanging out. I was telling him, like, yeah, I really want to be the biggest podcast in Wisconsin. And he just like kind of interrupted me and he's like, you already are. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you're the biggest podcast in the world. And I was like,
Oh.
what do you mean? And he was like, the truth is you need to believe it for it to happen. And he said,
I
if
see.
you just be the person you expect to be 5 years from now, be that person right now. Carry yourself that way. Talk that, like speak that way. Like communicate to other people that way. Do the things that you think that person would do, and you will be that person. And so I kind of changed my attitude about it. And I was like, no, I think I do have the best one in Wisconsin. And if I don't currently, I'm going to have the best one. So I'm going to put it on there,
Period.
whatever. Like I believe in myself, you know? And if
Period.
you think that's cocky, whatever, then you weren't going to listen to my show anyways. You know, like I'm not worried about it. And so I
Oh my
put
God.
that and I kind of like think that that's where I've gotten to now. I genuinely believe the one that my show is the best one in Wisconsin. That's how I feel about it. And so I'm just trying to learn and grow and continue to make it better and better and better where like everyone's going to listen. Anyone who cares about like alternative careers, you know what I mean, will listen.
Right.
So we'll see the opportunities that keep coming up. Like I said, on Friday, I'm going to go hang out with my all-time favorite music artist like and work with him for the day. Like that's how I'm going to make money for the day is hanging out with him backstage and interviewing him. Like,
Are you a hip hop guy? Because that's what I've been
yeah.
hearing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of music, but hip hop is like primarily the music I
Yeah.
listen to. But yeah, just I mean, more opportunities like that as they come up, it'll be super dope. Like I just interviewed Brooke Brighton. She's the meteorologist for Spectrum News, like
Mm.
statewide Wisconsin news channel out of Milwaukee. I got to go down to like the news station, you know, and
Yeah.
then
And that's always cool.
afterwards, yeah, I got to like go to like the weather room and see the green screen and see all the things. Like
Yeah.
genuinely, that was something that was extremely interesting to me. You know, it wasn't like lavish, but it was like extremely interesting. So anytime I can have more opportunities like that come up, which they seem to be endless. So just going to keep doing that. So people can pay attention if you just look up Passion Pod literally anywhere. Like Instagram is the main platform, but I'm on everything. YouTube's the best platform to like see what I'm doing as far as the show goes. But people can
We
reach
talked
out to me
about
too.
TikTok too. Yeah.
TikTok now, Passion Pod Official on TikTok. Yeah, I'm kind of everywhere, but mostly I'll just be putting out a bunch of episodes of the show.
Oh, I can't wait. This whole conversation has made my broadcast heart just so happy because I hear that you respect the process. I hear that you're excited about it, and I can't wait to see what's next. Chris, thank you for sitting with me. Thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, this was fun. Thanks for having me on.